Okay, so I want to show you how to assemble your ROTOPOD periscope lifter and rotary kit. So we'll open up the box. Okay, this is what you should have in here. So you should have an electronic hardware pack for the lifter, an electronic hardware pack for the rotary system. You should have a hardware pack for the lifter. Let's try and spread these out here like this. A hardware pack for the rotary kit. Okay, and then you should have all the long goods in here. Now this has the lead screw and the riser pipe and a couple of the rods, but if you look, we take these out, you'll see that two more of the rods are inside the Acme screw or the lead screw. Okay, so you should have 4 of these all together. So this is what should be in your package. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, it's like we got 4 hardware bags and 4 rods, your screw and the pipe. Okay, so start to make sure you got everything you need. Okay, we'll start by putting together the lifter, and this is what you're going to use first. So you use the lifter hardware pack and the 4 rods and the lead screw. And this is what you're going to have it look like once we get this assembled. So this is the lifter assembly here, and you can see it doesn't have any electronics in it, doesn't have the rotary system in it, but has everything you need for the lifting mechanism. So let's get to work on that. Okay, so once your package is unpacked, this is what you should have in the lifter kit assembly. So you have your 4 rods. Now you want to make sure the rods, they're tapped, and the screws are an oddball screw size. I believe one is a 448 and the other one is a 348. So they already have the screws in them. So you need to notice that you have screws in the ends of all of the shafts, including the little ones. Okay, so there's those. Okay, then you've got the screw. You've got your top mounting bracket. You got your bottom plate. You've got your motor mount here and the motor. This is the pipe clamp. This is the lifter, universal lifter carriage that will attach to the pipe clamp like this. The motor's going to go right here, and we'll walk through all these steps in a minute. And then over here in your hardware pack, you have the nut that'll go on the lead screw. This is the top bearing insert that goes into the top of the hollow screw. These are your 2 linear bearings, which will go inside here. I'll talk about that in a minute. You have your 2 pulleys. So we have this pulley here goes on the motor shaft. It's got the small hole, and this pulley, it goes on the bottom of the lead screw, so it'll go on here, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Let's see what else we have. We have our bearings that go on the top and the bottom of the lead screw, and then our timing belt. As far as hardware, our little parts, we have our limit switch stopper. That's this little, oops, excuse me, trying to do this one-handed. So this little rubber piece right here, that will go into the carriage right here, and we'll talk about that in a minute. This is the lower limit switch rubber stopper, and that will go on the end of this long screw right here, which we'll talk about. Okay, then we have the 2 long cap screws, these 2 right here, so they're the longest of the bunch. Those 2 screws, let's take one here, are going to be used to hold the pipe clamp to the carriage. So they'll go in these little holes right here. Let's see if I can get a good picture of this. This is terrible, I know. So they'll go through those holes and they'll clamp that together. And then we have 1 screw, that's the next smallest, and that screw is going to go right here. That's the one that, so it goes right in that hole right there, and that's what holds or tightens the pipe. When you put the pipe in here, that'll tighten that onto this clamp. What else we got? So these 2 screws right here, the pan head, those screws attach the motor mount to the bottom bracket. So they will go through this slot and into that hole, and the other one will go into that hole, and that holds the motor mount in place. The next two screws, which would be, let's see, right here, this one and this one, that holds the linear bearing in place. So the linear bearings are going to go in this hole right here, and you can see it might be a tight fit, but there's a slot cut in there right here to allow it to give a little bit. So we'll press these in. I'll do that a little later, and then those screws will go right here, and they'll hold the bearings in place. And then the other screw, of course, goes on the other side like that. Let's see, where are we at? Okay, then we have these two screws right here. These are metric screws. I believe they're number 3 or 3M or M3. Those two screws will attach the motor. So here's the motor, and the motor has these holes right here, the two holes here. That will attach the motor to the motor mount. So that'll go through this hole and this hole, and you'll see it's countersunk on this side. So you'll put the screw through this side and mount the motor. These 4 little screws here, they will go to hold the nut, which drops into the carriage right here. Those 4 screws will go right here in the 4 corners. So here and here, here and here, and they'll hold this in place. Now this nut, maybe we'll talk about that a little bit later too, but that can actually be mounted this way. It can also be taken around and mounted this way if for some reason you change your setting and use it for something different. And the universal lifter, there may be some benefits of flipping that around, but either way it can go both sides. But that's what those 4 screws go to. Then what do we have? Then we have the 2 set screws. Those will go, let's see here, they go here. So the set screws will hold the pulley onto the screw shaft. So here's the screw shaft. So this will slide onto here like that, all the way up, and then those screws will hold that in place. What do we have left? We have these cap screws here. Let's see if I can get in there. Right here, this one and this one. And those will go on the motor pulley, and they will go in here and in here to hold that on. Now, if you look in here, this isn't threaded all the way. It's actually got a countersink, and then there's threading down inside. And I didn't want to use set screws on the motor. I wanted to be able to really grab that tight because I hate it when the shaft slips. You won't have that problem on the Acme screw because it's plastic, and the set screws will do a good job. But I hate set screws when I'm trying to bind it to a small shaft like this. So I went with a cap screw, but the problem is the head of the cap screw is too big to fit in here, and so we're going to ream this hole out with a drill, just enough to allow the head to get in there, and then you can have a really secure fit. And I'll talk about that a little bit later too. Let's see, that's those 2 screws. Okay, and then these last 2 screws, get that out of here, right here, these 2 screws are actually used to attach the circuit board, which is right here. They go in, let's see, this hole right here and this hole right here, and they attach the circuit board to the bottom plate, which is right here. And you can see these 2 holes here and here. And again, we'll show that a little later, but this circuit board is going to mount to the bottom plate like that. And that's what those 2 holes are used for, or screws are used for. And I think that describes every part. So now we'll walk through each part one at a time.